Hi, everyone.
Hello. We've reached chapter 7 of Crisis of Conscience, Predictions and Presumption, and he starts with Deuteronomy 18, verse 22. When the prophet speaks in the name of Jehovah, and the word does not occur or come true, that is the word that Jehovah did not speak. With presumptuousness the prophet spoke it. You must not get frightened at him. Ray says, when it comes to attitudes about the promised return of Christ Jesus, eagerness is certainly to be preferred to apathy. Early Christians were definitely not apathetic about the hoped-for event. Recently, I watched a television broadcast in which a public relations representative of the Canadian branch office of Jehovah's Witnesses, Walter Graham, responded to questions about the failure of certain predictions regarding Christ's return. He said that if any fault was to be found with Jehovah's Witnesses in this respect, then it was only due to, quote, our enthusiasm of seeing God's name vindicated and his kingdom rule the earth, unquote. I remember that interview too.
Yeah, I do
the
too.
early 80s. Yeah. Most persons, I think, will agree that it is only human to make the mistake of saying things on the spur of the moment, to let wishful thinking or perhaps strong desire and enthusiasm sway our judgment, causing us to jump to hasty conclusions. Somewhere in our lives we have all done that. Surely, if that were all that is involved, no one should have cause for great concern.
Personally, I do not believe that that is all that is involved here, however. The issues go deeper, and the factors related have far greater significance than some common incidental mistake that we all commit at times. This is particularly so because of the way the predictions involved have affected people's most vital interest. A factor that cannot be treated lightly is that the governing body views Jehovah's Witnesses, at least those of the anointed class, to which the governing body members all belong, as cast in the role of a prophet, assigned to that awesome responsibility by God. Thus, the April 1st, 1972 issue of the Watchtower magazine, page 197, carried an article titled, "They Shall Know That a Prophet Was Among Them." It raised the question as to whether in modern times Jehovah God has had a prophet to help the people, to warn them of dangers and declare things to come. The answer was yes, that the record showed there was such a prophet. And then he has a copy of the article identifying the prophet. These questions can be answered in the affirmative. Who is this prophet? This prophet was not one man, but was a body of men and women. It was the small group of footstep followers of Jesus Christ, known at that time as International Bible Students. Today they are known as Jehovah's Christian Witnesses. They are still proclaiming a warning and have been joined and assisted in their commissioned work by hundreds of thousands of persons who have listened to their message with belief. Of course, it is easy to say that this group acts as a prophet of God. It is another thing to prove it. The only way that this can be done is to review the record. What does it show? So that was the quote from the article.
The record is worth reviewing. That it reveals mistakes even the headquarters organization will acknowledge. One morning in 1980, when serving as chairman for the daily text discussion of the Brooklyn Bethel home, the Society's president, Ray Franz, recounted to the headquarters family his recollections of expectations held regarding the year 1925, forecast to be the time for the start of the millennium. He quoted Judge Rutherford as having said afterward about his own predictions, "I know I made an ass of myself." And then in a footnote he says, "Take Talking to a large audience in Australia in 1975, Ray Franz related the same remark. And I remember hearing that, a version of that at the time, and I think everybody chuckled, like, as if it was something you could laugh off.
Yeah.
Ray goes on, the organization, however, treats these mistakes as mere evidence of human imperfection and also as evidence of great desire and enthusiasm to see God's promises fulfilled. I believe that the record shows that there is more to it than that. It is one thing for a man to make an ass of himself because of wanting to see something happen. It is quite another thing for him to urge others to share his views, to criticize them if they do not, even to question their faith or impugn their motives if they do not see the matter as he sees it. It is still more serious for an organization representing itself as God's appointed spokesman to all mankind to do this, and to do it not for a few days or months, but for years, even decades, repeatedly, on an earth-wide basis. The responsibility for the results can surely not be shrugged off with simply saying, well, nobody's perfect.
No one is, but every one of us bears a responsibility for what we do. And it is especially so when our actions dramatically affect something as important and personal as others' relationship with God. No less serious is it when a group of men have divided views on predictions related to a certain date, and yet present to their adherents an outward appearance of united confidence, encouraging those adherents to place unwavering trust in those predictions. I suppose I must credit my experience with the governing body for also bringing home to me the reality of these matters. During the first 20 years or so of my active association with Jehovah's Witnesses, I had at most a hazy idea about any failures in past predictions, and simply did not attach any great importance to them. I had no interest in literature attacking our teachings on this point. From the late 1950s onward, certain society publications, such as Jehovah's Witnesses in the Divine Purpose, A History of the Organization, and the society-sponsored book Faith on the March, did mention these failures, but they did so in a way that made them appear as of minor consequence, and I viewed them in that same light. It was not until the late 1970s that I learned just how far the matters went. I learned it then, not from so-called opposition literature, but from Watchtower publications themselves, and from active, respected witnesses, including fellow members of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, like so many of us, he woke up only after accidentally tripping over these things. In our case, it was from calls we had, right?
Yeah.
Who brought these things to our attention and wouldn't seem to make progress until we gave them some kind of answer.
Yeah, and I when I was a witness, the only one that I really was aware of was the 1975. I would have been 15 at 75. I was aware, and even then I was kind of had the idea that they didn't put it in print. It wasn't until I started reading like the literature from the 60s that I realized, yes, they had said, with charts that ended with 75 and things like that. But at the time, it was always downplayed by everyone around us, so that you kind of just had that attitude, he said. You just sort of view it in the same light as everybody else. It's just cast aside.
Sometimes you have to do what Ray Franz does here and actually thrust the photostats in people's faces to get them to even take seriously what you're saying.
Yeah.
What's our link?
Nobody's perfect. J.W. Org's Inspired Invention, the Uninspired True Prophet. That was based on Ray's other book, In Search of Christian Freedom. But read the description, because it will explain why we gave it that title.
It has to do with a certain movie that was voted the greatest comedy of all time. You probably have seen that movie with Marilyn Monroe and Jack Lemmon. The last line is, well, nobody's perfect. So it seemed to be a perfect introduction to the subject of the Watchtower's humility. See you soon.